I think we fail to realize a lapsed donor doesn't see themselves as a lapsed donor. Like if you were to ask them, do you currently support XYZ charity? And their last gift was 14 months ago, they'd say, absolutely.
Yeah, I love them. Right.
So to your point, we're not calling them out, hey, your last gift was 14 months ago. Do you still care?
Right.
Like, do you care about kids that don't have food? Probably not the communication.
You terrible person.
Yes.
No, we don't do that.
No.
Welcome to Cause and Effect, a podcast brought to you by the Dunham Podcast Network.
Here, we will provide a fresh voice that breaks down the most recent leadership lessons, fundraising trends, and the ups and downs within the nonprofit industry.
And our goal? Increasing your effectiveness for more impact.
Welcome to this episode of the Cause and Effect Podcast. I'm Trent Dunham, the President and CEO of Dunham+Company, and today with us is Josh Crowther, the VP here at Dunham+Co as well. What do we say? Like, are you former Aussie? Are you an Aussie that lives in America? Like, how do you...
I'm an Australian who lives in America. That's good. I like that.
Okay?
No, yeah.
That's good.
I'm never going to be a former Aussie. I'm born and bred.
I get it.
That's
I
how
get
I
it.
am.
I mean, I'm never not going to be a native Texan.
Right.
You can't change that.
That's who
so
you are.
There we go.
Exactly.
But today we have a specific topic, a very specific topic we want to discuss.
Right.
That, comes up every now and then within the nonprofit landscape. And I think there are some myths associated with how this thing happens. And that thing we're discussing is, why do people stop giving to your organization? And then what do you do about it? They're kind of twofold. So I'm going to lob some softballs your way, maybe some grenades, and you can,
let's go.
You can just juggle them and then hit what you want. But,
Great.
That first question, why do people stop giving to an organization? Obviously, there's probably a handful of different reasons.
Right.
They fall into largely two camps, in my opinion. Self-inflicted and not self-inflicted.
Right.
So as an organization, I cause the donor to not want to give because, and then outside forces that I can't control as an organization. So maybe let's start with the latter.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that organizations really can't control, but that cause donors to stop giving to their charity?
Well, and we really start there with the everyday life things. So unexpected expenses, or things like my financial investments haven't gone well this year, or there may be other household pressures on me. My cost of living has gone up. Those kinds of things, which are in the macro economy, ultimately you as an organization cannot control all of those factors. On that side, I think they're right now we're seeing this gap emerge where there's probably more fear about the economy and its impact than the reality on the ground. Yeah. So in our latest donor confidence research, which you guys can get, what we found was that over 50% of the donor cohort were saying, you know what, life's actually pretty comfortable. There aren't true financial challenges to my household. So those earlier things that I just mentioned there, they're really not impacting me at any significant level. However, when asked about the economy or what causes you to pull back your giving, they cited things like the economy in general at higher levels than they had before. So what we're seeing is there is a fear that the future is uncertain, and that uncertainty is probably in the category of the organization can do some things to help bolster the confidence of the individual, but ultimately there's macro things playing out at the same time. Yeah. So when we see a fear like that emerge, and it truly is not connected to someone's personal financial situation, which they told us it's not. Yeah. They're like, no, I'm doing great, but I can see that the future's a little uncertain. And they were saying things like, it's going to take longer than 2 years for the economy to recover, where I would be happy with where the economy is. And then almost 70% said at least a year or more. So that's a huge amount of your donor file right now who are like, yeah, it's going to take some time to recover. Yeah. So with that in mind, that's kind of that first category. I'll say mostly unexpected expenses, my family, medical things, whatever it is. Those things you can't control. Yeah. But then you say, okay, fear, we start to get into perception. So this is where, well, if there's something that I believe in and I want to invest in, I'll continue to do that. And this is where some of the self-inflicted wounds from organizations come into.
But part of what we're seeing at a macro level is a decrease in number of people involved in charity.
Right.
Just across the country. So the percentage of households able to give and be involved in giving are doing less and less of it. So that's an important aspect too. two questions for you on that. One, why? Two, do I just do anything about that, or is it just like a reality I live in?
Right. Well, I think and it's a great question, because ultimately this has been happening for over a decade now. I mean, this trend is not a positive trend, and it has been going the wrong direction for quite some time. There are some exciting things coming, like the UCD universal charitable deduction should help. When we ask that question of like, hey, if you were tax incentivized to give, there were people who are currently sitting on those sidelines, so the 50+% of households who are not giving said, you know what, I'd jump back in at that point because I'm seeing there's some incentive there. Sure. And so we'll see a little lift likely from that in terms of participation. But I also think to the organization who's listening now, like, what can I do about that? Well, I would say the competing narratives that are out there in terms of purpose of life, what does the good life look like? How can I be involved in generosity, and what does it really do to my life? I think we have seen some erosion of that. I think the me culture does not help when it comes to generosity. Yeah. But it's also, I mean, you see the fruit of that, right? So the fruit of not being generous equals a life that I would say is not as full. And so if we do have anything as organizations, we have a different narrative to tell, and that narrative leads to fullness of life. And so if I think about the way in which we can invite now people into that, well, it's going to take being sometimes more compelling than the Nike ads, which sell fantastic shoes, or the new iPhone, because literally in the environment that they're scrolling down in their feed, they'll see ads for all sorts of things. Yeah. And the question is, how are you putting something forward that is compelling in a way that moves their heart to give? Because ultimately it is the moving of the heart that we want at the end of the day.
Yeah. So those are some things that we can't control. And I agree, like, there are things at a macro level that have to begin to change in the American dream narrative, and the church has a big role to play in that, right?
Really big role.
Yeah, right. And starting to cast a vision of why charitable involvement is so important, and that's not just from a financial standpoint, but my volunteerism and all those kind of things too. So those are some things we can't control. Now, my favorite part of today's discussion is, what are the self-inflicted wounds that charities create of their own accord that could be avoided, but that cause people to stop giving to their charity? I know it's a long list, so maybe just start with a few.
Well, the first is silence. Yeah, I mean, and this is something that happens, right? So we have these people who have been faithfully giving, and they may have a tough year, and they stop giving for a year. And then for most organizations, they're then making cuts to, well, we don't communicate to people, anyone outside of our current donor universe. So for the family that's dropped off in terms of giving, well, now we're not communicating to them in all of the channels that we otherwise could. Now, I'm not saying you throw all of your budget after people who are, haven't given for 10 years and only ever gave one gift. However, silence is one of the things that will guarantee you don't reactivate a donor. Right. And so, and we saw this somewhat through, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy, through COVID times. So like organizations who are like, you know what, everyone's doing it tough, let's just not say anything because everyone's doing it tough. Well, donors stopped giving because you didn't say you needed anything. That's right. For those who turned around and did the opposite and said, hey, we get, many of you will have to pull back at this moment, but there's going to be some of you who can step forward. Well, they found more than enough people to step forward to fund and then some their ministries. And so we saw the silence versus when they were proactive and communicated. And so I'd start there. Like, don't go silent on this group of donors who have stopped giving, because like all of us, they've got lots of things going on in life. Yeah. And so now we have to be effective with our return on investment. So if we're doing things like direct mail or even text message, there's a real cost to that. And so we don't want to completely throw any sort of budgetary considerations out the window. But I would say, look at those donors who have given loyally before. So those people who have given for multiple years to your organization and then have a break in that giving period, what you'll find is they're the most likely to reactivate of any donor cohort. So not silence, but communicating intentionally to those who have supported for many years. And you'll see many of them will come back and reactivate. In fact, if you look at the church attending cohort, so this cohort of donors who regularly attends church, which many of the organizations listening to this, that would be the core constituency, your core donor file. If we look at those donors, over half of the donors who have had to decrease their giving over this last year say they want their giving to get back to full strength this year. So they want to come back strong.
Yeah.
And so what do they need to come back strong? Well, they probably need you to communicate what that need looks like and how they can be involved.
Yeah, it's good. Silence for people who have lapsed, but also I think to your point, silence to people who are already current donors. It's like, oh, they just gave, we don't want to talk to them again. Well, why would you do that? That's not like in a relationship where you're deepening the relationship. You don't be like, hey, we just went to coffee last week. I'm going to give them a month. Like that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
Which does have, I mean, you see organizations where they're like, hey, they just gave, let's not talk to them for a couple of months because we don't want to solicit them for anything more. We've already got a lot out of them. And what happens is they lapse. I mean, it's just, again, what we see is the most likely donor to give is the one who's just given. Right. And so the longer you leave it between even reporting back what they've done, the amazing things they've done, and then what is the next thing they can get on board with, the sooner you see that second gift, the more likely they are to stay with you multiple years. Yeah. So if all that is true, then don't go silent. You're right. At any point in that relationship.
Yeah. So silence would be one of the things that we do organizationally that could cause people to stop giving. One of the other things, and you'll have other ideas too, but one of the things that comes to mind is it's almost like the boy who cried wolf. Mm-hmm. So like if we're always about to go under, it's like, well, why would I give you another $1? This is like the third communication in a year that you're telling me like it's urgent now or never. Right. Like, so I think there's some of that hyperbole that can get overused and burn people out and be like, well, I mean, I want to give to an organization that's actually strategic and not, I'm saving them every month. Right. So I think that's part of it. And then the other on the opposite side of that coin is if you never express a need, they're going to stop giving because there are other places where there's expressed needs that will result in an outcome that can be tracked and fed back to the donor. So if you never have a need, why would I stay engaged with you financially? And if you're about to go under every month, why would I stay? So I think those are kind of two sides to the same coin of why someone would stop giving to our organization.
And it gets unbalanced. Yep. And what you're kind of pointing out there is that if we get unbalanced on the requests, the challenging for them to support because we're like a rug store going out of business every month, like, nobody believes it. Yeah. It's like, I can't believe that you truly are managing your resources well. Now, if there is a moment like that, then I suggest telling people about it. Sure. But that's not an every month thing. No. It's probably, hopefully it's not a every year thing for you that you're in budget crisis. Yeah. Again, hopefully you get good at that. But now this is the opposite end. And often I find in larger organizations, there's sometimes this, particularly if you have a strong engine, and churches can be like this, but larger organizations can be like this, where we just want to tell the good stories. We just want to show people these amazing stories. All we want them to do is just like pray and see what these amazing stories look like. And what you actually see them put out is "we're so great" communication. I call it the "we're so great" communication, which is like, we are the most amazing organization, and look at all the things we are doing. And people are like, "Great job, keep doing it." I'm not involved in it, but I'm just so glad you are. Yeah. And so what that means is naturally they disengage financially because, you've told me you're so great that you have no needs to meet. And so what do we do? How would we behave in a different way? Well, let's put the donor and the impact together rather than the organization being at the center of that and saying, we're so great, look at all these great stories, having no challenge to the donor to participate in any way. Mm-hmm. Let's connect the two. And when we do that, we see them engage at a deep level.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else on your list of self-inflicted wounds?
There's one other category, and that's the way I was treated by a ministry or organization. So it's a thing that people will cite in the research. They'll say something they did caused me to disengage from them. So this can sometimes be, there are, I'll call it bait and switch pieces in a fundraising program where you'll have, sign up or give a gift of $5. And then I get 15 other channels telling me that I really should have given 15 or I really should have given 30. And you'll see sometimes this is deployed, tactically where it'll be wallet first, not heart first.
Yeah, it's good.
And I think that we see that in our industry, right?
Yep, I mean, we do. It's horrible.
It is. I mean, sometimes you see the penny strapped to the direct mail piece or whatever version of that. Yeah. Now, I'm not suggesting that tactics aren't important in acquisition, right? But there is a point at which you say that this is about the relationship with a real person.
Yeah.
And the investing in that relationship in a way that is both challenge and inspirational, both that you have both involved, that you will see that the long term counts. If you're working in a fundraising mode which says it's only ever about the dollar today, you will inevitably burn out your file quicker than anyone else.
You just churn and burn, baby.
Yep.
But it's a good point, and it is when the focus is more on the immediate ROI than the long-term relationship.
Yeah.
You will benefit so much more by investing in the long-term relationship, caring for people along the way, being genuine. I think that's part of that equation too. So, okay, so we have self-inflicted and uncontrollable contributors to we're finding ourselves with donors decreasing, not overall revenue. We're talking about actual donors, fewer donors giving to a charity. So we find ourselves in that situation, self-inflicted or not. What do we do? Like, what are some things we do to get out of the hole?
Yeah. I mean, stop inflicting those wounds would be the first place I would start. Yeah, but I think that the other thing is you look at your current communication schedule, the thing that you're using to plan all of your communication, and then pull a little line out and say, how are we engaging with those folks after their first gift is a really good moment because we know there's a high chance of them dropping off. So what are we doing there in order for them not to stop giving in the first place? That's really important. Mm-hmm. The other place I'm looking is for those who have dropped off in this last 12 months, even further back where they've shown a loyal behavior. What are we doing? Which communications are the most effective at re-engaging them? Mm-hmm. And then I'm looking at other channels to re-engage. So can I re-engage with things like content, things that I can do to bless them? And we often find that as people re-engage with content 1, 2, or 3 times, for a content ministry, that's fairly easy. For another type of organization, that might look different. But when we re-engage them with activity, then we see the gift follows. And so look for the opportunities in your other channels to engage those folks. So whether that's social media retargeting, whether that's with your email file offering some sort of free resource for them, get them to take that step of engagement. And when you've separated those things out on your communication schedule, just deploy. So deploy that communication as you have intended. And if there's a little bit of budget needed to do that, it's worth it. The long-term investment is worth it. I'll say for most of the files we're working with right now in terms of that lapse reactivation cohort. So when they give their reactivation gift, we're finding about double the number will go on to give a gift beyond their reactivation gift when you compare it to brand new donor, which means they're twice as valuable as a brand new donor. Yeah. So keep that in mind. So if there is a little bit of investment, expect that the re-engagement gift may take a little more investment. Once you get that, you'll find them much more likely to be long-term donors.
Really good insight. Yeah, one of the things that I think we fail to realize is that a lapsed donor, someone who stopped giving after their last gift, 13 or more months after their last gift, doesn't see themselves as a lapsed donor. Like if you were to ask them, do you currently support XYZ charity? And their last gift was 14 months ago, they'd say, absolutely. Yeah, I love them. I'm a supporter of theirs.
Yeah, I love them. Right.
So in our mind, we know better because we see the data. But as a result, I think we fall into a trap if we communicate with them in that way. So to your point, we're not calling them out. Hey, your last gift was 14 months ago. Do you still care?
Right.
Like, do you care about kids that don't have food? It's probably not the communication.
Terrible person.
Yes.
No, we don't do that.
No. But because of the way that the donor sees themselves, to your point, we're not changing materially things about the communication. We're just ensuring that they're getting that and we're not dropping them off too soon. And to your point, ways that we throttle the total universe of people that are in that lapse cohort is based on longevity,
right?
Total value, like what's been their financial commitment to the organization, number of gifts. So maybe it's if the first cohort is they've given in multiple years previous to their last gift, that's probably the best
highest
cohort.
Propensity for sure. Yeah.
Maybe they gave multiple gifts within a single year, but they're not a multi-year donor. That's probably the next cohort. So there's ways to look at, and as a organization, be a good steward of the dollars deployed to communicate with those folks and not just send it to everyone. Someone who gave one gift 13 months ago is not a good prospect for re-engagement.
Highly unlikely. They're going to look more like a non-donor than they are a lapsed donor.
That's good.
Yeah.
Any other recommendations on what to do when an organization is in that situation, or do you think, hey, man, run the play?
I do think there have been some scenarios where intentional reactivation in text is actually starting to get some real traction. So previously, email was like our go-to cheap one where we can kind of re-engage a massive group for really inexpensively. I'll say the issue with email right now is they're just getting ignored. And so you've seen your inbox. I've seen mine today, like literally just today, and I can't possibly get to all the emails that are coming into my inbox. So what we've found is with a deployed text series where ideally highly enriched content, whether that's video or other content, which is valuable to that individual, connecting the dots there can be really helpful. The only other thing I'll say is, you already mentioned this before, but the way in which you talk to them is pretty important. So hey, you're a lapsed donor is not where I start any of the communication. There are some scenarios where I would say it's appropriate to ask for their ongoing support. Their ongoing support is fine. I'm okay with that. But where you're saying you're a lapsed donor, I would cut any of that out and instead use the existing communication that you've already said. Use that existing communication to include them in what the new chapter or season of the organization is going into. So you're including them in that intentionally to say, you're still a part of this. And here's a way which you can have this impact as an individual. And you see, they'll reactivate at pretty high levels.
That's good. It's a common issue. It's not going away anytime soon. So we have to be prepared. There's trends in the country in general where fewer and fewer people, there's a lot of drivers for that, and why fewer people are involved charitably. But for our little patch of land that we oversee where there's people engaging financially, stay the course. Ensure that you're not just dropping people off when they exhibit some sign of lapsing. Be strategic in who you're communicating to and why. Make them the hero, not the organization. And don't get involved in all the self-inflicted wounds. Like, communicate with them effectively. Don't go quiet.
Right.
But then also appreciate the factors that you can't control. And I think oftentimes it's important to get an outside perspective. Like, what are other charities within our sector or vertical? How are they faring? And like, where do we measure up? So try to figure out ways to do that. As you begin to process, how we fight this decline in number of donors engaging financially with our organization. So Josh, thanks for joining us today, giving us some perspective and thoughts and some data, as you like to say, to back up all the claims. And thank you for joining today's episode of the Cause and Effect Podcast. Join us again next time.
And thanks for listening to the Cause and Effect Podcast, a resource developed by Dunham+Company.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. In the meantime, do us a favor. If you like this content, subscribe, share us with a friend, leave us a review on your podcast provider, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Dunham+Company to help us spread the word.
Thanks again, and join us next time as we work together towards increased effectiveness for more impact.